This is Starry Ari's ASMR. I am Ari, and today I want to try a completely new recipe that I have never done before. So my in-laws have some fruit trees on their property, and this year they got a ton of plums. So my mother-in-law gave us a pretty big bag of plums, and I love plums. So today I want to try and do like a plum crisp, and I found a recipe. I'll link it in the description below if this turns out good. So this is just going to be a calm bake with me kind of video, and then we'll see how the plum crisp turns out. So the first thing I need to do is wash my hands. I'm going to take my rings off, wash my hands, wash the plums, and then I'm going to come back. I'll set out my cutting board because I need to slice up all of the plums and place them in the pan. Okay, so I have got my freshly washed plums over here. I have a little cutting board, and then I have my greased 8x8 pan over here. So I'm going to de-pit the plums, slice them up, and then lay them out evenly in this pan. So I'm going to take my little paring knife and just slice through the plum. I just like to do just right around the center like that. And then the pits in these plums are actually coming out pretty nice and easy. And then you can do this a few different ways. So again, I've never made this recipe, so I don't know what's going to work out best with this. But usually when I make things with plums, I just like to do kind of slices rather than like chunks or anything of it. And then what I'm going to do is just lay out these slices in the pan. And I'm doing this probably a lot slower than I actually would just for ASMR purposes. Also, my knife skills are like atrocious, so I apologize if you are a professional or even just like a moderately good home cook and you're watching me. Like, this might make you very nervous. So I'm just going to lay them out like this. My dog is also snoring in the background, so there might be some cuts in this video, no pun intended. And I think I could probably be slicing these up more uniformly, but you know, I have a lot of plums to slice, and I'm not gonna get too caught up in how these slices look. I'm also like not, you know, I barely bake with fruit, so I am not an authority on the matter in any way, shape, or form. But I do love plums and apples, and I always love fall because it is when my in-laws harvest their fruit trees. They don't have a ton of trees, but the trees that they do have just like put out so much fruit. Also probably laying these out more uniformly than I actually need to. I'll probably get a little bit sloppy with it as we go along. I'm hoping that this turns out nice because if it does, we have even more plums that my husband can well, if I make more desserts, my husband can bring those desserts into work. So if this dessert turns out nice, I can try and make it again with the rest of our plums. And if it doesn't turn out very nice, then we have enough plums to try other recipes. Now, I am also using more plums than the recipe calls for because I saw in some of the recipe reviews, some people thought that they would have preferred to have more plums than they did. And some people said that they added more plums and it worked out just fine. And especially if your plums are particularly ripe, which these ones definitely are, then the sugars aren't really as much of an issue. Like, you don't really need to add extra sugars if your plums are already pretty sweet. So I am adding extra plums just because we had so many of them. Also, I think it's best to slice fruit with, like, slice anything really with like much sharper knives, and we desperately need to sharpen our kitchen knives, which is why I think sometimes it's kind of like pulling like that rather than slicing nicely, which is actually more dangerous. I think it's more dangerous to cut with a dull knife than a very sharp knife, because I think a sharp knife you can kind of estimate where it's going and like what you're actually gonna do with it. Whereas a dull knife, it's gonna like not cut in certain spots or like bounce off weird in other spots. It's funny seeing my very nicely laid out plums in there, and then my just chaos. So yeah, these plums are fairly ripe, so I really wanted to try and do something with them sooner rather than later. And my in-laws actually have done quite a few different things with their plums, but one of their favorites is to make plum vodka. So they basically just soak their plums, they slice them up, soak it in their vodka, treat it, do whatever you do for something like that, I have no idea. And then they have like plum flavored vodka. And it's always kind of a fun treat to make some like, holiday flavored things with some plum vodka. But we don't really drink too much. They don't either, but it's just one of those things that definitely like lasts a good long time. Like, you can make the plum vodka and it's gonna last, a decent amount of time. But they also have apple trees, so they always end up getting tons and tons of apples. So we have some apples from them as well. But I think we're just gonna eat those as is. We love just regular apples. thought I was gonna need this paring knife to like have to dig out the pits a little bit more, but these plums are so ripe that is not necessary, which is kind of nice. Now that this is getting pretty full, so I'm definitely gonna like fill it out, and then I think I'm also gonna do not like a full second layer, but I'm gonna like make this very, very plum heavy. I do see some space in between these plums, so we're not going to have any of that. When I have enough plums to feed an army, we're definitely going to make sure that this pan is full. So my cuts are getting like bigger and bigger as we go. I think this tends to be my style of cooking. Like I get impatient about the prep, and so I just kind of end up doing whatever. Like my pieces are never quite uniform. Now that we're getting more into fall, I'm kind of in the mood for some fall baking, and I want to bake some cookies soon. I'm thinking about doing like pumpkin spice cookies with like a maple icing, because that sounds really, really good. And I usually like to bake cookies around when my husband has a division meeting at work, because I love cookies and I definitely eat more of my cookies than I probably should, but it's also nice because he can then take the rest of the cookies or most of the cookies to work with him, and then people at work get to snack on some cookies in between their classes. I think that this is looking pretty okay. Maybe I'll do one more plum, because I'm certainly not going to be upset if we end up with too many plums in this. Like, I love plums in general, and these ones are really, really sweet, so I don't expect this to turn out, like too bitter. Like some plums, when they're not quite ripe, that can be pretty good if you, balance it. But I think for this is going to be pretty sweet. Okay. Alright, so we have our pan of sliced plums here. And the next thing that we're going to do is sprinkle a little bit of cinnamon and sugar on top of these. So I'm going to do about a 1/4 cup of granulated white sugar. So this is definitely not a healthy recipe by any means. I don't really want it to be. Looks like a crazy amount of sugar. Like I said, I've never done this recipe before, so we will see how that turns out. And then this isn't called for in the recipe, but I'm also going to add a little bit of cinnamon because I think that that sounds really good. So I'm going to do a little less than a teaspoon. Just sprinkle that around. And then this is all that we're going to do to the plums. So next I need to make the crumble or the crisp mixture that is going on top of this. So I'm going to set these off to the side. Okay, so I have this mixing bowl here, which is what we're going to use to mix the dough in, or the batter. I don't know exactly what this one is going to turn out to be. So we need another amount of sugar. One, I'm just using the same quarter cup. Okay, so that was 3/4 of a cup of sugar. And then next we need 1 cup of flour. So that is our 1 cup of flour. And then we need 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder. And we also need a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And then now I'm just going to take this whisk and mix up all of our dry ingredients. Okay, so that is now nicely mixed together. So next I'm going to stir in an egg. And we're just going to mix this all together. Okay, so this is now pretty nice and crumbly. I did see in some of the recipe reviews that some people preferred to add another egg to kind of make it more of a crust or a dough. But I think that I'm maybe going to trust the process and leave it pretty crumbly like this. And once we spread this on the plums, we do drizzle everything with melted butter. Okay, so here are the plums that we prepared earlier, and I'm just going to sprinkle this mixture right on top. And I'm trying to kind of evenly spread it all around. So our topping crisp mixture is now spread on the plums. So next I'm going to melt my butter and then we're going to drizzle that right on top. Alright, I just melted my butter on the stove real quick. Well, I'm actually using margarine to make this lactose free for my husband. So now I am going to spread this on top. I'm wondering if my little spatula, no, I think I'm going to get a little spoon. Okay, so I'm just going to spoon and drizzle this butter around the top coating. And it's not going to be perfect, but that's alright. I also did see that some people preferred to put the butter directly in the topping mixture instead of just spreading it around on the top like this, which I think would probably be pretty good. I think it would just make it a little bit more of a doughy top. So we'll see kind of how this turns out. But this is also pretty good because all of the extra butter is just going to go right down to the plums underneath. Alright, so this is our kind of plum crisp mixture before we bake it. So I'm going to now bake it in my oven. It says about 40 minutes, but it says until the fruit is bubbling and the topping is golden brown and crisp. So I'm going to throw this in the oven and we'll see how it turns out. Alright, so here is our plum crisp. As you can see, I probably could have done a better job actually spreading it all the way around, but I kind of wanted it to be just like a throw on top type of thing, and it didn't really make it too pretty. But all of these kind of top bits, this is pretty nice and golden, and when I was pulling it out, all of the plums were kind of bubbling up. So I am going to let this cool down for a little bit now, and then I'm going to take out a little slice and try it for myself and see how the recipe turned out. So this has been cooling for a little bit and I am very excited to try it. And I did look at the picture on the recipe and this actually looks pretty close to their picture. So I think I was a little bit harsh on how it looked earlier. And it doesn't look like the prettiest dessert, of course, but it looks like it's gonna be delicious. Okay, so I have a knife that I'm going to try and cut off a little piece. And I have a little plate with a spoon. I'm going to assume that I need that spoon to actually get out the piece that I cut. But let's go ahead and try. I'm just going to do this little corner here. Oh, that actually held together pretty well. A lot better than I thought it would for sure. So that's what it looks like on the side. Again, it's not the prettiest dessert, but I'm gonna go ahead and try a little bite. That is actually really delicious. I'm very glad that I added the cinnamon to the plums. It's really delicious. And I think next time I'd even be interested in adding some vanilla, like vanilla extract to the coating, the topping. Well, I am going to go off and enjoy my little slice of plum, like cobbler, or crisp, or crumble, whatever you want to call it. Turned out really tasty. I think I'm excited to kind of mess around with this recipe a little bit more and like perfect it a tiny bit. So thank you so much for watching this kind of casual bake with me videos. I tried a new recipe. I'd love to hear what your favorite fall recipes are. I'm always kind of interested in baking. I kind of stress bake sometimes. So I'm always kind of looking for new recipes, even if I'm not the best baker. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your day. I'm gonna go eat this delicious coffee.